It's been an incredible day, and I've got a fair bit to get through. And I know some of you are looking at me thinking, you dressed weird today. I know, man. I tried. I'm trying to look my best, but I want to honor Pastor Lucinda for really creating this platform and believing in young people so literally they don't just say it, they actually do it. And so this is something that's incredible. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nolo Mokoena. I am a young leader. As I said last year, I prefer the name Young Simba, so I like King Kwezi. That's actually a great name, but I have the honor and privilege of leading a organization which is a youth platform called the Grind Africa in partnership with Standard Bank. And what we do is we invite African influencers under the age of 35 and we put them in one room and try and elevate the level of what we call leadership and vision for this continent to ensure that we're raising the necessary titans in order for us to move forward. And a lot of people ask me why I do this, but the reality is this, is that I live in a generation where being an entrepreneur has been reduced to having a business plan. Where being a leader is determined by how many followers you have on Instagram, where people think having political power to actually bring change is determined by how popular you are at your local branch meeting. And so we felt like the Grind Africa was a natural response to the African reality, particularly amongst young people, for us to do. I also have the privilege of sitting on the presidency's youth working group for international relations. So if you have any ideas, please do let me know. We are struggling. That'd be great. But hey, if you're a young person in Africa or South Africa today, you're really bombarded by a number of realities. The first reality, which is actually a wonderful one, is that for the first time in a very long time, having a vision for your country is the status quo. I think that's an incredible thing. Yeah, some people have very messed up visions, but it's okay. It's a start. At least people are dreaming about a South Africa they'd like. The second thing, which is great as well, is that working or doing something that you're passionate about is absolutely important to us as a generation. I think this is great, and you can talk to people on generational theory, but I think it's a wonderful thing that we love doing something that we love, even though sometimes we're not very great at it, but that's a different conversation. The third thing, which is a pressing issue for me, this is one that's heavy on my heart, is that as a young person, you're going to spend hours a day refreshing your Instagram timelines and refreshing your Facebook page and Twitter feed because you want to know what someone else is doing and you're comparing their work to you. And the last thing, which is actually not that great, is that you'll speak to some of your friends and for hours you can debate about who's more important culturally, Taylor Swift or Katy Perry. And so that's definitely something we're working through. But all humor aside, I think we have an incredible opportunity as young Africans to really mold this continent in a significant way. And I like saying this because I really spend time working with organizations around the idea of transformation. Now let me say this, transformation is not black and white people holding hands. We have a country with high rates, infection rate, poor education, an economy that's not growing, high unemployment. When those things change, society is transformed. And I like to tell people we need to graduate from celebrating symbolism to actually start praising true progress in a nation. And I'm here to encourage you that as young Africans, this is what we're focusing on. The one thing as well, ma'am, I do like Bobby Brown as well. I think I just want to say, I love Bobby Brown. I love Bobby Brown. I just put that in my notes because I love that. I love Bobby Brown, but young people, we believe we can do anything. Yeah. Don't tell me I can't do what I want to do. Yeah, I can rap. Yeah, I can't rap, but I can. I'll sag my pants if I want to. Yeah, I'll download Fruity Loops, get my friends to do an Instagram shoot for me. Yeah, I'll rap if I want to. But the reason why we believe we can do anything is because we have this internal drive to really take ownership of what's happening in society. But for us to truly understand this, we need to understand that transformation is going to take 3 phases. I'm going to run through that for you. These are 3 phases to transform your organization, society, or anything. The first phase is that transformation has a face. First phase of changing anything is the face of transformation. I call this the Michael Jackson phase. Yeah. What you don't know is that in the 1980s, MTV wouldn't play Michael Jackson's music videos because he was considered too urban. Michael Jackson, the guy, too urban. But what happened is over time, as they started playing his music videos, they started to think that they were progressive as a music station. But essentially, in the context of South Africa, that's what we had. You see, 1994, post-democracy, we had a, BEE. Now you've got more black people in management. We've got women managers now, which is great, and people are feeling chuffed about themselves. This is awesome, man. It is fantastic, but it's only the first phase, because we need to stop sacrificing true progress on the altar of symbolism. And what we find is that over a period of time, the symbolism is not enough to keep the change going, which will bring us to our second phase, which is what I call the voice of transformation, AKA Kanye West, the greatest of all time. That's a side issue. We can talk about that offline. But the voice of transformation is important as well, because the voice of transformation continues the change on a given trajectory towards the desired destination. And this is something that is important. How this looks in an organization, it's one thing to have a young black male on staff. It's another to ask him to tell you about the realities of his life and his friends. It's one thing to have a woman on senior management. It's another for her to say, women in this organization leave at 6 o'clock because they have families. That is the voice of transformation. And that is something that we need to understand if we're really going to change society. Now, South Africa has done a lot of great things in 23 years. I'd like to highlight a few things which I really like. The first is I think they've done a great job in uplifting poor people in this country, which are predominantly black. Sure, I think it's cost us a whole lot on the social grant wage bill, but people at least can buy food. And actually, speaking about grants, by the way, we disburse about 13 billion rand a month in grants in this country. That's astronomical, isn't it? The funny thing is, where does the majority of the money go? ShopRite and Pick n Pay. Who owns ShopRite and Pick n Pay? I won't mention names, but they live down the road. Just something to think about. Really something to think about. The third thing which is important, which I really want to touch on, and I want to spend time, is that once transformation happens, you have what I call the preeminence of change. Now, this is something that South Africa has still not got to. This is something which I believe you'll maybe get to in my generation, but I'm not too sure. And there's no great example of this than how I grew up. I grew up in a small town called Mafikeng, where, shout out, did someone, yeah, okay, cool. I think I forced that shout out. No one was giving it, so I was like, shout out, I got you, it's cool. Right? The preeminence of change. Growing up in Mafikeng was really interesting, because Mafikeng was part of a former homeland called BOP, Obuputatswana, which was sort of separate and didn't run quite as the South African state then, which was very racist in its laws, but essentially you sort of had similarities in the reality. And so growing up in that place was very fascinating for me, because I've always loved numbers. I've always been that guy. I used to study dinosaurs, Triceratops. I was that guy. I was in the hood. Let's play soccer. Nah. Have you seen the T-Rex? You know what I'm saying? But what I found is that as I went through school, because education was the only way that I was going to make it out the hood, I began to find some interesting things. I kept on being bombarded with people who had so much confidence for being so mediocre. And every time I speak, I make that joke and say, I pray for the confidence of a mediocre Afrikaans male from Potch. Just like walking in, hey, what's going on here? And it's like, so it's super crazy. But what that symbolizes is what I call the preeminence of change, which means that for some members of society, their status or role in this country is independent from their performance. And this is a measure of change that is now systemic. And what we need in this country is true preeminent change in various areas. And I believe that we as young leaders are working towards that place. And I give you my commitment that we will not stop until that happens. I love America as a democracy. I love it as a country. I think it's a fascinating case study. And I'll tell you why. Because America is both a republic and a kingdom. It's a republic in the sense that it's a country that runs on its own, and it has autonomy in its own politics. But it's a kingdom because we're all American. We watch their movies, we listen to their music, we watch their series. Some people know more about Donald Trump than they do about local politics. We all are part of this, we're all American. I'm American. I finally made it. But in the same way, young people are both a republic and a kingdom. They're a republic in the sense that we're not the same, which is one thing I dislike about generational theorists. They all think, oh, millennials. No, we're not. We're not the same. It's very segmented. There are millennials who are families, millennials who are married, millennials who are ambitious, millennials who just chill at Tiger's Milk. Anyway, that's a side issue, but we're not all the same. But in the sense that we're a republic, we're also a kingdom. There's a language we speak as African youth, and that's a language of hope. That's a language of challenge. That's a language of saying we appreciate those who have gone before, but we want to fight for preeminent change. And I model this around the journey of the Israelites. Joseph, rising to be prime minister in Egypt, was symbolic of what an Israelite could be in the nation. But then Moses had to come. And he was the voice for the people, the voice of change, the voice of progress, the voice of tomorrow. And we all know the story, how it happens. Joshua, David, Solomon, and today, their own Camps Bay. So why would you change? I'm going to close this. Why would you change? Well, the true reason is this. You don't know you've lost market share until you've lost it. You don't know you've derailed as a nation until you crash. And my question to you is this. Africa is rising, but who is it rising for? And Africa is definitely rising, but the last thing I will say is, who's it rising with? So we as a youth believe that being an everyday hero is rising with Africa in the direction that we believe it's supposed to go in. Thank you very much.